Hello. Hello,
Hey.
everyone. We have the third LinkedIn Live of 2024 with Factors.ai Road to Revenue series. Today, we have a very interesting and an important guest, Justin Rowe from Impactable. Justin with LinkedIn doesn't need much introduction, but Impactable is very well known. It's one of the largest B2B agencies in US. And Justin is also a very local or vocal LinkedIn top voice about LinkedIn ads. So this is something which we have been waiting for quite some time to have and present to our audience. We are at Factors.ai. We really like LinkedIn ads, and we think LinkedIn ads make a lot of difference for ABM. And so we have Justin to talk about how to use or how to run LinkedIn ads for your ABM strategy. Very, very, very warm welcome here, Justin. Thanks a lot for taking time to be here.
Awesome, and happy to be here. I think this will be a good session and definitely a topic that seems to be pretty relevant today for a lot of people.
Oh, of course. This is I think one of the key things which almost ABM is an accepted philosophy. I think it's gone beyond looking at it as tools or looking at it as just as a strategy. It's like a kind of a B2B marketing philosophy across the board. It's fully accepted. But in that aspect, I think LinkedIn is one of the most misunderstood for various reasons, both in terms of ROI, cost, how to do it right, where things can go wrong, etc. But I hope you can clarify quite a few misconceptions and get people over the line with regard to LinkedIn ads together.
Yeah.
Firstly, to just get started, if you can just briefly introduce about yourself and also Impactable. What are the updates which have happened over the last 1 year? So it's kind of common knowledge.
Yeah, just the quick recap of kind of who I am, why my opinion might be relevant. My name is Justin Rowe. I actually founded a LinkedIn outreach agency about 4 or so years ago. That was my first startup. We scaled to about 200 active clients, and then we were acquired by a data-heavy investor and made a pivot, a really strong pivot 2 years ago at that point into the more of the ad space and to being a LinkedIn ads agency. We've since pivoted, or we've since grown from that, and we've become, I think one of the largest LinkedIn ads agencies for B2B in the United States and North America. We have about 260 active clients that we manage LinkedIn ads for, and we've kind of now been diversifying some of the other channels, because one of my big things that I really push for is that LinkedIn ads can be really hard to run in a silo. It's a great middle of the funnel hero. It works great in a marketing ecosystem. So we've tried to support our clients in a few more channels recently. In the last 6 months, we've expanded. And probably what's next for us is we are looking to get more in the data side. We are leaning more into ABM strategies and going up market a bit, working with more mature companies. But that's a little bit of who I am and what we're up to.
Okay, 260 clients. That's pretty heavy. That's one of the largest lists, which most companies I've seen. It's like a pretty large enterprise list. This is all primarily B2B technology companies, or it's across the board?
It's all B2B, and then the three major categories is IT service and consulting, software, SaaS companies, marketing agencies, other advertising. We white label our services. We actually have a little subsect of marketing agencies that we run ads for, and they actually leverage us as a white label partner to their ads. And then we do have management consulting and some other smaller niches, but those top three are probably 80% of our business.
That's great. So to just start off, Justin, one of the key things which many companies ask about LinkedIn as well is it a good platform or is it an ideal platform for ABM? Because at the face level, LinkedIn looks obvious. It's a professional network. People are there to learn about what their peers are doing, get learning on the professional context, and they are there with their titles and everything. So you actually know who you are targeting, who you are speaking to, what you are posting, etc. But at the same time, it also feels like it can be something which is a very, very long marketing cycle, or a very long or very costly ad platform, which for anyone to get on very easily. So can you talk about why does LinkedIn ads actually make sense for ABM?
Yeah, so for me, there's a couple of reasons that it makes a lot of sense. So the first one is the targeting. You can get a lot more granular. So for example, I mean, yeah, if you were going to take an ABM approach to programmatic or display or Facebook Meta, you would have to own the data, the contact list of the people you want to reach out to and load it on that platform. With LinkedIn, you can create filters that capture very targeted accounts. You could target people that are in the geography you want. They have the position titles that are decision makers, or you can go job function and seniority. You can then layer on company size, so you're dealing with companies that actually have budget, or that don't have too much red tape, or in the size that you typically work with. You can layer in additional filters as far as interests, product interest, or like content interest. And so from that perspective, the targeting aspect, I think, works really well with ABM. The main tip that I usually say is I would upload company lists, and then I would layer on LinkedIn's filters to expand to the relevant decision makers at those company lists. Because in most other situations, like what I said, when you're doing Meta, you upload contact lists, but that data degrades 20-30% over the course of a year, because people leave jobs, come to jobs. If you upload a company list to LinkedIn and use their filters to reach the relevant decision makers there, that targeting is essentially dynamic. As people come and leave the company, that targeting remains kind of true. So in that sense, I think that's a really good reason for LinkedIn ads for ABM. And then the second reason is, I honestly think LinkedIn is one of those few platforms where people log on, decision makers, B2B decision makers, purposely log on with the intent or desire to be influenced on buying decisions. Like, they actually log in wanting to know what other people are doing, what marketing techniques, sales techniques, technology people are using, advertisers that people recommend. So they're not logging in to be entertained. They're honestly logging in to be influenced on buying decisions. And that's a really powerful mindset.
That's great. So at a fundamental level, one is like, we have seen companies build ABM lists. So they start with a ZoomInfo or an Apollo, build a list of companies which fall under their ICP profile, either firmographics, technographics, and a couple of other details which they look at. And then they look at decision makers, get their email IDs, and also use any kind of contact enrichment so that they can get personal email IDs, and then upload this list into programmatic dashboards. Opposed to that, what you would advise for companies looking at LinkedIn ABM is like, take a company list and then look at native filters within LinkedIn for titles within that, rather than having a contact list which you have to buy for.
Correct. And it's cheaper that way for LinkedIn. You would still need to own the contact list if you wanted to do LinkedIn and programmatic and like Meta advertising all to the same group, which that would be a good approach. But for the LinkedIn side, yeah, I would say the company list would be better than the contact list.
That's great. So that's at the first level, is like building a list and going after this thing. And within this, there are multiple silos as well. So companies ask, like, there are companies which are selling a 50K ACV product. There are companies which are selling a 25 to 50K ACV product, or 20 to 25 ACV product. There are also companies which are selling less than 10K ACV products. Which segment is more ideal for LinkedIn, or is there a different strategy for each of these segments itself?
I would say, yeah, LinkedIn tends to be better for the higher LCV, or the higher lifetime value clients. For the ones that are maybe $5,000 or less LTV, that can be a little trickier with LinkedIn. If you want LinkedIn to pretty much, if you're thinking of LinkedIn as a silo, like you launch a LinkedIn cold campaign and then you're retargeting to that small LTV, that can be iffy. But I say 5K and up, that tends to get a lot more favorable. And then obviously, well, maybe not obviously, but to the people that are getting the most benefit, I think, out of LinkedIn are the ones with the 20, 30, 40, because they don't have to close a lot of deals for that to make ROI sense. And the LinkedIn retargeting aspect, I think, can really help enhance the ROI of that. But yeah, the higher LTV, the better, usually with LinkedIn.
Mm-hmm. What about lower ACV products? So let's say someone is like 5K, or even 5 to 10K, which is there. LinkedIn might not be ideal for as a single channel. Do they use it as a combination with other channels, or how would you look at it? Like, run Google ads, then retarget visitors from Google ads into LinkedIn, or is there something like that?
Yeah, and I would say with our first startup, we were kind of in this boat where we were selling a service, but it was a lead gen service. It was high churn, and I would the LTV on that probably was less than 5,000. And so our approach, and this would work for a lot of people, is we used Google paid search to get high intent traffic, kind of funneling to the website. The problem with Google, I love Google search, and I think that's a foundational channel for most. The main problem is, it's very competitive. You're paying a decent amount for the click. Those people are kind of in shopping mode, so they're visiting 2 or 3 or 4 of your competitors in a short amount of time. So it's highly competitive traffic, but it does show intent. So we would use Google paid search, and then we would retarget and qualify that traffic with LinkedIn retargeting, and then we would try pushing organic. So we would try to get top of funnel in an array of ways: SEO, paid search, organic. And then we would leverage LinkedIn retargeting as the main retargeting lever. And the main reason we did that and it worked is that LinkedIn is, I think, the only platform that natively lets you qualify all of your website traffic and just retarget the good fit traffic. Because unlike Meta and programmatic, you can set up 90-day retargeting audiences, but it's just all of your website traffic. With LinkedIn, you can say all my website traffic from this geography and these company sizes that have this seniority in these job functions, I want to just retarget that group that meets my ICP. That enhances the ROI of your paid search, your SEO, your organic efforts, because it's cleaning, qualifying, and just retargeting good fit. That was a good combination for us and for a lot of people with smaller LTVs that could really try to get the most out of your marketing spend.
Well, that's interesting. So in summary, like, you run paid search, which is naturally the most fundamental ad channel which you run, and then you retarget. But most importantly, when you do retarget, you can use LinkedIn native filters to filter in only companies or segments which actually matter for you by geography and other this thing, and then you target them. And for lower ACV companies, this can work very well. Does this retargeting strategy and also the Google plus LinkedIn kind of a strategy change for more like mid ACV companies or higher enterprise ACV companies? Would they do anything different here?
That is a little different. So for example, if we go back to the ABM approach, a lot of people, when they think of LinkedIn and they think of ABM, they're loading their lists, and they're running the cold campaigns to their lists. And essentially, a lot of the times the thought process is, we're loading these smaller lists, and we'd have to get a ton of interactions in order to ever get into retargeting. So we're probably not going to focus on retargeting on LinkedIn. We're just going to focus on getting more lists, getting fresh lists, advertising, to that group, refreshing our message, getting subsects of the list, and getting more personalized message to that group. So I would say, a lot of times they kind of discount or think that retargeting isn't going to really apply to them. But what I would say is, okay, take a step back and look. All of your efforts, ABM, organic, paid search, SEO, all of this is generating traffic to your website. And yes, you're loading ABM lists because you're going after these higher value targets. But what if I told you that there's people that meet your ICP, your ideal client profile, who have already been on your website or your company page? If they exist, wouldn't it be worth retargeting? So you could do it one of two ways. You could just set up your retargeting native filters and do kind of like what I said, find out and sift out those high fit people and retarget them. Or with your ABM lists, you could say, okay, yes, I'm loading all of these lists. And if any of these people exists in my retargeting audience, I want to retarget them. Or to get there faster, you could say, okay, maybe I'm targeting these specific 300 companies, and I have a couple decision makers at each company. When you switch to retargeting, switch over to the company side and say, okay, even if one person from the company visited my profile and that's a warm account, I now want to expand and target more people from that company, not just that one person that I was targeting originally. So maybe I did load a contact list and I did go after this person. I got his attention. Now I'm going to retarget more than just him. I'm going to expand to the relevant decision makers and influencers at that company and put them in my retargeting audience. That can help you accelerate that deal so that when that person does kind of bring this conversation to the buying committee, there's more people in that company who have been exposed to your ads, and you can accelerate that deal. So yeah, I would kind of put a twist on it like that.
Yes, actually, it makes sense because we have seen quite a few companies where they say, like, though the customer success team or the product team is the buyer persona, they also want to show ads to the finance team, or they want to show ads to the CXO team, because it's like when the deal, let's say a 25K ACV deal comes to the table, you don't want finance team or anyone else to put a stopper there. So to accelerate the deal at the last leg, they want to use the LinkedIn ads and then do a retargeting and then pitch that in. But one thing which people also struggle with is, like, is there an audience limit here or a minimum audience limit? When you run retargeting on LinkedIn, or when you even start looking at LinkedIn audience lists, and for a certain kind of audience, it wouldn't work unless you expand the audience. Is that a problem which comes through?
Yeah, the minimum audience or target audience that you can have with LinkedIn is 300. So it's 300 contacts or 300 individual people. So I would say, and this might be another case where if you're hitting, or if you're finding it hard to, if you're loading lists that are that small and you're hitting against that limit, what I would say is typically you're doing a contact list upload and you have, 3 or 200 specific people. What I would say is switch over to a company list instead of a contact list and expand your audience to a few more people. Even if, if I'm going after small companies and say maybe you have a small LTV product and you're actually going after these 11 to 50 size people, 11 to 50 size companies, and you're just targeting like the founder, which might make sense in that group. And so, you have a list of 200 or 300 companies and it's one person at each company. In order to make that work, upload the company list, expand beyond just that 1 or 2 decision makers, and you'll 3 or 4x that list, and you'll still be able to really decently saturate that company and deeper into those companies with a pretty small budget. Even if you expand to like 3,000 people, because you expanded it, a small budget of $20 or $30 a day could still decently saturate a 2,000 to 3,000 person group. So you don't need a big budget to saturate a small group like that.
Got it. One other thing which also comes in is, like, you make a great list and you also know like how to set up a retargeting audience. You have a minimum target audience list which you have to do, and then you target them, and you also make like expand your decision makers so that you have the acceleration capability, and you also work with Google plus LinkedIn. But the next thing is, like, what are the kind of assets should I use? Because LinkedIn has a range of assets, right? From conversational ads, text ads, general brand ads, even video ads, and other things. Like, what are the kind of assets and for different kind of ACVs and types of companies which can be used here?
So I would say the single image ads are still kind of the bread and butter of most organizations, and they still do pretty well. The initial touch, the initial first campaigns, I like to be a little more straightforward as far as like my first touch campaign is usually, this is who we are, this is what we do, or this is the main pain point we solve, or this is the main result that our clients are kind of buying this product, this service to achieve. And single image works really well. I would say that video assets work very well with LinkedIn. And I would suggest maybe a shorter video in the cold campaign, and then you can retarget based on how much of that video they watched. So a short video can actually help funnel, more people into retargeting faster. Because if you have a 30-second video, they only have to watch, like less than 10 seconds of that video to equate 25%. And then as you grow a retargeting audience, you can tighten that and say, okay, now I only want people that watch 75% of this video to make it into retargeting. And then you could use video assets in retargeting and make those longer. Now that you got on the radar, they know who you are, what you do, you can expand, you can probably command a little bit more of their attention. And the types of assets that I really like to use, I focus on trust and credibility. So in my mind, with B2B, it's way different than e-com in that you can't just hope to stay top of mind or get your logo in front of them and move the needle on a 50K, LTV deal. What really moves the needle is if you can make them trust you more or feel that you are the expert. So I like to use things like actual real life case studies, client testimonials, subject matter expertise, interviews, podcast, guest spots. Like something like this, these clips, if we get these, we usually distribute them or even promote them and put money behind them, because it's one thing for me to make a commercial or an ad to say, hey, I'm the LinkedIn expert. It's another to get invited on a podcast and for someone else to say, hey, this guy in this agency, they're the experts in this area. That's really powerful. And that works really well with paid ad spend behind it as well.
It's quite a good example. But just to rewind back, you made a very interesting point about something like a teaser ads. There are ads which show where like you can show a short ad, get people to watch a certain level beyond a 25 percentile, then retarget the same audience back into a kind of a longer ad and this thing. Can you get into little more nuances, like how do you execute something like that and how does it work at what scale?
Yeah, so LinkedIn to me, one of the things I like about it is it does have all these different formats. So it has single image, it has video, it has text and spotlight and follower ads, and that allows me to kind of wrap our advertising around prospects a little more. We can get a bunch of different formats, but with video specifically, or I guess single image, LinkedIn lets you create retargeting audiences based on interactions with other ad campaigns. So for example, I could set up a cold ad campaign with video and it could be, it could be 60 seconds long. And then I could retarget based on how much of that video they watched. So if they watch, more than 50% of any of the videos in this campaign, I can retarget them with a separate campaign that's only targeting those people that were highly engaged with that campaign. This campaign, this second video campaign, I would possibly do longer. It could be 2 to 5 minute videos. And then you could do that again. You could set up a retargeting audience for this one that says anyone who watches 75% of this video should get put into a different campaign. And for that one, I would say, go for the jugular, I guess. Like if they've watched videos in this campaign and then they were highly engaged with even longer videos in a second campaign, that's the perfect audience to put a lead gen form or a stronger call to action. Book a demo now. Let's talk. Reach out to our team. So you can set up those kind of funnels where it's an audience based on the interactions with another campaign.
That's great.
Nice.
And I assume this works more on a higher ACV side or more enterprise deals, or can be used for even mid-market level deals?
I would say usually for the mid-market or the smaller ones, it might not be worth it to go through that effort to have kind of this this ongoing funnel. Usually for most people, what works perfectly well is you have your cold campaign, and a lot of time that's pointing traffic to key pages on your website or landing pages on your website, letting them get a good first look and first impression. And then you have a 90-day retargeting audience that says, okay, if they visited my website or my company page or they interacted with my cold ads, I'm going to retarget this group and I'm going to layer on. Usually I'll have different formats. This one I'll have single image, some text, some spotlight, so that when they log on to LinkedIn, they're actually seeing us and our logo in multiple places. And then typically what I do is if they make it through that 90-day window without interacting with any of our ads, without visiting the website or the company page that would refresh them in the audience again, if they make it through that window, I drop off all the expensive ads. So we drop the video ads, we drop off the single image, and we just stay in front of them for another 3 months with very light touches: text ads, spotlight ads, follower ads. Really low cost, really low impression. Keep our logo in front of them a little longer without all the expensive money. And then if they do interact with any of those ads, we do have a little 30-day segment that says, okay, anyone who actually engages with our retargeting layer, that's a really warm audience. Let's push a really strong call to action with that. So that little kind of 4-part segment seems to work really well with most mid and low LTV kind of offers.
Oh, it's pretty awesome. It's like kind of creating a surround sound over a period of time as a time series, like a ring around the prospect accounts in some form, and showing them multiple ads, and also doing it economically over a 30, 90, and maybe a 120 or 180-day window. That's interesting.
The surround sound is a good way to look at it. And I've said that too. It's almost like, it's almost like close to the central core action. You have like the highest concentration of ads. And then the further away they get from that action, that website visit, we drop off the intensity of the ads, the layering of the ads, and we still stay in front of them lightly. And then as soon as they take action again, they get thrown back into kind of the nucleus with all, kind of all of our ads hitting again, and then it fades away again. So yeah, it's
for some
a good
reason
approach.
this reminded me of my high school chemistry teacher, where like from the nucleus you do this thing. But that's great. One thing which also since I have been getting a lot of questions as we were speaking, so before I lose my train of thought, you talked about trust and credibility in ads and your assets and how you actually pitch to the trust and credibility in assets. Can you even like how do you actually, what kind of assets do you use? How do you actually grab out trust and credibility, make a very good, both in terms of ad format or a single page, single image ad or other thing with these kind of what kind of sources are you taking at?
Yeah, so for that, and yeah, that's a big one that I talk about a lot, and my, the idea is that, yeah, the reason they're not taking action isn't because they might not just be because of timing, might be because they don't know you, they don't trust you yet. The kind of assets that work really well, the first, I would usually say, take a look at your website. A lot of times when you build your website, you're trying to answer these same questions. Why should anyone buy from us? What makes us different? And so you kind of pack some of these things in there. Sometimes you'll have case studies of noteworthy accounts that you got good results for. Those assets, they make really good ads, but I would in order to make them like bite-sized ad, I would do a couple of things. I would maybe make an image that just highlights the before and after, like we took the client from this to this, and then the text can maybe go through a couple of the highlights. You could even point them to the full case study on your website if you wanted, through a link or something like that. So case studies work really well. A lot of times, instead of just like the way case studies are presented on a website, what I do is I might do like more of like an interview style where I talk through the case study and I actually, explain what we did. Or even like, if it's something that you could show, like a screen share, walking through strategy, walking through like how you did that. So real life examples. And then I do think one of the things that works maybe the best is kind of those interview thought leader experts. If you sit down and you think, okay, how can I tell people how to do exactly what I want them to pay me for? Let me, actually map out the steps. If you create those assets, videos, those make really good ads, and they do two things. If someone has the time on their hands, but they don't have the budget, sure, they'll take what you give them and maybe they'll try to do it for themselves. But that's not your ideal client. Your ideal client has the budget, they don't have the time, but they need to know that their money is going to be in safe hands. Or they think they have the time, they start to digest your content, they realize it's more complicated than they thought, and they realize that you're the expert. So kind of really going into your exact playbook, and really dredging up your subject matter expertise in video form, in written form, in images that really hit on specifics. Those work really well for kind of those trust and credibility ads.
Got it. We also have G2 reviews or Trust Radius reviews or Gartner reports and other things. How do those assets work very well, especially for SaaS companies? Because most SaaS companies would be on G2, would have a certain kind of, they would have the reviews and the quarterly kind of awards and badges which come in. Do those things work, especially in the mid-market level?
Yeah, they do. They look nice on the website. And I think the way that I would approach them is, so I've seen people do a couple of different things. First, they'll make the whole ad just about the G2 reviews. Hey, we've had 37 G2 reviews, and I think that can work well. And it's as an extra touch. The other thing I've seen work well is just kind of like your website. You don't have a whole page dedicated to that. It's there's usually some content. There's something right above it, and then there's these bars or a couple of logos that highlight that. So even just working those into something else, for example, you make an ad that's about a pain point you solve, and then you have in the bottom, just extra social proof, 52, 5-star reviews from G2. So it wasn't the whole purpose of the ad, but it helps give credibility to whatever the message you wanted to get in that ad. So I would try both, because it is worth, like, if it is a reputable, if it is a big reputation booster, you could make a handful of ads just about that. And if that's one of, 7 ads that they see over the course of a month, that's a good touch. But it could also just be a slight elevation to your other ads as well that you could work in.
That's great. I mean, we have covered quite a ground here, right? From ABM, list building, and then retargeting within that, then assets within that. How do you target assets and other things? But the more important thing which we want to do is LinkedIn ads don't work in silos. No company or no B2B company is just going to do LinkedIn ads. You covered a little bit of like Google plus LinkedIn ads for SMB and this thing. But generally, when you talk about ABM strategy, and especially with larger enterprises, they would use one of the larger ABM platforms like Rollworks or Six Sense or Demandbase and other. How does LinkedIn ads work together with other channel platforms, including Google, Facebook, uh, TikTok, etc., along with your and also with your programmatic ad channels, etc.?
So to me, it's almost like different paints or different tools that we put on a canvas. They have different purposes, and so looking at the purpose of the different tools and your unique situation can help. For example, a lot of companies, a lot of big organizations that are running the ABM playbook, a lot of times, like I said, they're not running retargeting because their website audience is, they're getting tens of thousands of visitors. It's very diluted. There's a very huge mixture of like qualified, unqualified. And so they feel like the best way forward is these ABM lists that they're uploading. They control the quality and they don't worry about a lot of the other stuff. And they are investing usually pretty heavily in Google ads, paid search, which is not, going to be an ABM approach, but they like the intent from those. And then they're taking their audience and they're using programmatic, which for us, we use a DSP Stack Adapt, which has really good placements. And we leverage CTV, native, and display. And to me, programmatic is a really good part of this because to me, that's the you guys are everywhere kind of element. Programmatic, getting those display, really good placements across the internet when they log in to different places and they see you keep popping up, especially the native ones where they're like on entrepreneur.com or they're on Forbes or they're on New York Times website. And then your ad pops up inside of the page that actually looks like you're part of that website. Those are really good touches, and those are great kind of also trust and credibility factors of you guys are everywhere and you're I'm seeing your ads on like well-known websites. Meta to me is more of just an extra touch because that's still a platform that many people use. And they're not necessarily in buying mode, but if you do want to be everywhere and you want to and also the algorithm there of finding other people more like it. So for LinkedIn in that ecosystem, I would say it's quality control. So that's the only platform that can really clean and qualify all of that traffic and keep squeezing something consistent at the bottom. So I do still lean on that very heavily for retargeting, even with these big organizations, because it's really hard to do retargeting well on the other platforms. So the way that works together is, I would typically, if a company needs more top of funnel traffic, then I would, lean into paid search. I would lean into SEO, organic more. And if the problem is, okay, we have all this traffic, but it doesn't seem to be moving down the funnel, LinkedIn retargeting is, to me, a middle of the funnel hero. So it's qualifying all of that traffic. It's retargeting just the good fit. And then the other part that I really like programmatic for in Meta isn't necessarily just hitting the ABM lists up front and kind of attacking from all sides. It's also, retargeting multi-channel and kind of being everywhere to a smaller group of prospects and looking for ways to segment that. But depending on what you need in your ecosystem, those channels you'd lean on different ways, I guess.
No, that's interesting. I think one is like to capture the intent at the top of the funnel or even bring in organic traffic. You have Google and SEO, organic search and paid search, which comes in. Then you have LinkedIn to retarget with specific native filters to say that these are the companies I want to target using LinkedIn and run LinkedIn ads with the kind of right assets in terms of building trust and credibility. And also then you actually add programmatic channel as another channel alongside. That is LinkedIn ads work for LinkedIn platform, but for the same set, how do you actually basically look at for like when they are on either a publishing site or whether they are on a newspaper, news, or any other website, sports website or something, to give that surround sound in terms of programmatic ads. How does and programmatic ads work with ABM list? How does the cost aspect work? Most of the people, they kind of seem to kind of withdraw as soon as they feel that LinkedIn ads are costly, and compared to even programmatic ads, and they feel that it's a lot more costlier compared to Google search ads, which is high intent and which converts very well. How much of this is true, and is there anything which we need to really do to make sure in terms of tactics or in terms of your audit experiences why LinkedIn ads end up becoming costly and how to contain that?
I think a big reason that people think of LinkedIn ads as very costly is because a lot of people run it in a silo. So if you think of LinkedIn, okay, I have my paid search, I have SEO, I have Meta going, I have email marketing, and now I've heard great things about LinkedIn, so I'm going to give it a try. I'm going to create a siloed HubSpot landing page for this campaign. I'm going to create, I'm going to upload a list. I'm going to create targeting, and I'm going to start, my LinkedIn advertising. They segment it away from everything else you're doing. They're sending the traffic to a siloed landing page. And then, you have to wait till that specific page gets enough traffic to get into retargeting. They don't let LinkedIn actually, qualify or retarget the rest of your website traffic. It's only allowed to retarget the traffic that it produced. So in that sense, that's going to be super, super expensive. The cost per leads, the time to get, a profitable ROI, if you ever get there, is going to be a long road. So I think that is a common approach that people don't realize the harm, or that they're kind of, handcuffing their hands behind their back. When really, if you have all this ecosystem already and you just started with LinkedIn retargeting, like, you don't actually have to launch your first LinkedIn campaign. Doesn't have to be a cold campaign to people that have never heard of you before. It could be you simply set up the pixel, you set up your retargeting audiences, you let it collect and track your website traffic for 30 days, and then you launch a retargeting campaign. The other thing I think that people, when they say it's too expensive, it's because typically in the journey of what people try, LinkedIn ads comes after they've tried a few different transactional channels. Google search is kind of transactional. It's bottom of the funnel, competitive. If they then launch, usually it's SEO is not transactional. It's long-term momentum building. And then Meta ads, usually their first foray into Meta is broad audiences or upload lists and lead gen form. And that feels very transactional. And then email marketing, they usually lean into, which again is transactional. And then they get to LinkedIn, and they're thinking, this is another transactional channel. I'm going to run a lead gen heavy approach, and I'm going to compare the cost per lead of LinkedIn to the cost per lead of Facebook, which that's an unfair comparison. Really, LinkedIn, if you use it right, I think is more like SEO. It builds momentum. It, as the retargeting audience grows, it helps the whole ecosystem become more efficient. And you have to look further than cost per click or cost per lead, because the quality of the lead matters. So if the lead is 5 times more likely to actually show up for a meeting, and if they're 2 or 3 times more likely to actually purchase, and if the deal size is 3 times as big, then how much are you actually willing to pay for that lead, and is it really too much, or are you just really comparing it to a Facebook lead, which is not a great comparison.
How does LinkedIn compare with ABM programmatic ads in terms of cost? Because programmatic ads is also the same, kind of impact or same kind of assets, but in a different platform. How does that compare?
I do think that of some of the other channels, that programmatic for ABM makes a lot of sense, because you can be kind of everywhere. You can distribute, images, text, video. You can distribute some of those same assets. The main thing that I think is different is the retargeting layer, because that is really hard, if not like impossible to do correctly on programmatic. Basically on programmatic, the play would be to kind of saturate that entire group. So you upload a list and you kind of just want to swarm that whole group. Whereas with LinkedIn, you actually can, target a bigger group. You can look for those signs of like interest and then actually segment out an even smaller group. For example, if you're loading a 10,000 person list on programmatic, you're just loading that list, you load an appropriate budget, you're kind of trying to swarm that, but you're never getting to the next step where if 500 of those people actually showed interest, that you actually give that group their own separate attention and actually go deeper with them. It's kind of harder to go beyond that surface. You're trying to get their attention, you're trying to get their website. But then if they do visit your website, you don't necessarily have anything extra that you can do for them. You don't have this kind of long-term play where you're putting, more trust building activities and or that would be really expensive to just continue to saturate them with programmatic ads for 6 months without segmenting out those that actually showed interest. So I think that would be probably one of the bigger differences.
So in a sense, like if you are running LinkedIn ads along with programmatic ads, use programmatic ads for a more initial first impact, getting people aware of your brand or your product, etc., or the solution which you're solving for, get them into the website, then use LinkedIn to retarget, use more credibility and trust to actually sustain that interest and convert into leads or pipelines.
Yeah. And then what you can do for meta and programmatic retargeting is most of those platforms let you retarget by page visit. And so if you set up a retargeting audience with programmatic or with meta and you say, if anyone visits a page on my website that contains, medium or source equals LinkedIn, like specifically single out, because anyone coming in from LinkedIn ads campaign is going to be that's your quality filter. So even though programmatic and meta make it really hard, like you can't just retarget like qualified website visitors, you could say, yes, like what you were saying, I would use that as a good first touch. And then I would also set up a separate retargeting on programmatic that says, and anyone who visits our website that came to us through LinkedIn ads with that UTM, I want to give them special attention in a little retargeting programmatic because I believe that quality is high quality and worth staying in front of them to a different degree. So yeah, I think that those two layers could really help.
Yeah, it's like using UTM and then look at who's coming from LinkedIn or organic social or specific this thing, and then retargeting that specific list back at an account level back in programmatic to create that.
Yeah, because otherwise meta and programmatic retargeting is just all your website visitors, or you try to do the upload your UT. Or it would be messy unless you actually used LinkedIn ads UTM, and then that's kind of your qualifying filter to say, okay, I know if they came through LinkedIn that we've qualified them. And so I feel comfortable giving this a little dedicated budget and staying in front of them longer across multiple platforms. That would work really well.
Makes sense. One other thing is like we have also seen metadata and a few other orgs. Products talk about like how you can target LinkedIn audience and Facebook, and that will be much cheaper. Does that actually happen, or does it work?
We've used a few of these. So there's 6 Sense, there's metadata. Metadata I liked. And I think what they try to do is, I think the problem is they take the ads and they push them to the different platforms. I think metadata is good because it actually creates a series of experiments and really tries to see which ads or campaigns are performing and then pushing more budget there. I think the problem with that, though, the main problem would be they'd have to be hooked in far enough to know to judge on quality, because a lot of times, like it matters what it's judging success based on. If initially it's cost per click or cost per lead, and it's not actually getting to quality of lead or the meeting or actual revenue, then a lot of times it can be optimizing for the lowest cost per lead, which might actually be pushing for the lowest quality lead. So I would say there's some nuances there, but as far as if that's, so I think that's the way they try to reduce the cost and make it more efficient, which in theory, if that would be really good as long as they're hooked further down. So I do think a platform like that, theoretically, if it's working correctly, is kind of taking the ecosystem approach that I have, and it's trying to do machine learning and kind of deciding which way to lean. I do that a lot, like manually, where I look at the website traffic and I say, okay, what do we actually need? The main problem, I think, though, is that putting more money behind what's working today isn't always the best option, because, for example, LinkedIn ads, if you you could have conversion tracking set up for last touch, last campaign, or last touch each campaign. Now, if you do last touch, last campaign, and say they interact with four of your campaigns and then they convert. If you just start optimizing for what's actually converting, you turn off the ads that actually were influencing that and actually driving those conversions, and it starts drying up. It would almost be like if I look at an ad account and I see that 80% of my conversions are coming from retargeting, these dumb cold ads don't seem to be working, so let's shut them off. But then you dry up the funnel that your retargeting was actually using to squeeze conversions out of. So I do think there's a lot of nuances there where platforms like that, they might be helpful in throwing money at what's working, but then it's being counterproductive at times.
Actually, this actually gives a very good pathway into the next set of questions, which is part of some of my favorite questions also in terms of ROI and attribution. I saw some of your videos where you talk about that happy middle, rather than geeking out too much on numbers, at the same time not believing it, you have that happy middle. How do you look at LinkedIn attribution to revenue and pipeline?
So for LinkedIn, and for attribution in general, I try to take an approach where I try to triangulate the truth, which means I don't necessarily think that any software out there can tell you exactly, where, either where the leads came from or what the influence of those different sources. Even if you saw the whole journey, weighting those properly can be really hard. So usually what I try to do is, inside of the channel, like LinkedIn, I do really fight for channel attribution. So I will, just like, and I stole this from ecom, because an e-commerce store would never even think of launching a marketing campaign unless they could track, everything down to like the actual revenue. Like if you had a meeting booked, if you had a purchase, how was the value of that purchase? But for B2B, it blows my mind. Like 90% of LinkedIn ads campaigns that get launched inside the channel, they can't track anything beyond like a form fill. They can't track like a meeting booking or an actual purchase or anything like that. And they just throw a bunch of money at it anyway. So I would fight for channel attribution. If you have meetings that are booked through Calendly or HubSpot, you can set up a URL forward so that they hit a booked call page. If you have, even if you have a massive LTV, if new clients are coming on, you could give them an intake form and push them to a welcome page that only paying clients hit. Or if you use some kind of payment portal, like we use Stacks Payments, we push people to a payment confirmed page. So in channel, we track booked calls, we track leads, we track form fills on our website, and we can track actual purchases. Then we do implement self-attribution. Anyone who books a call with us, we ask them on their required, how did you find us? Where did you hear about us? And then we do lean on software attribution. We use Hockey Stack. And with those three, then it's kind of, I think you can triangulate the truth, and you can, kind of use your intuition of what's working. But with LinkedIn, especially people that lean on HubSpot attribution, a lot of times you try to set channel attribution as best you can and implement self-attribution, but it's it can show you the influence. It can show you that people were exposed to these ads or clicked this ad and then converted to that meaningful touch point. And so I focus on that, and I focus on like key intent pages, like the pricing page, the contact us page, the about us page, maybe, and try to look for those indicators that we are getting more of those conversion events. But at the end of the day, at the channel level, I think, at most or at best, you're gauging the influence of your ads on meaningful actions, and then you kind of have to triangulate the truth through those other methods. So it's a little tough.
One thing which also happens with LinkedIn, and this is something which we see being a LinkedIn marketing partner, is they give API access to see LinkedIn views. That is, which view through attribution through LinkedIn, which companies or which accounts have just seen your ads and then have later come to your website either through organic or paid, even after, like, say, 20 days or 50 days or 60 days. Does this come into your kind of view in terms of like how does that work? Have you seen like how LinkedIn views have impacted paid or organic visits or any other aspect about that?
And yeah, that can be a good one. And that's one like Dream Data and Hockey Stack. They use that in their attribution, so they could hook into like
every attribution vendor. I mean, whoever has a LinkedIn API connection, they're able to give that.
Yeah.
How does that work?
So So basically what those do is, so yeah, if you go into LinkedIn and you go into the dashboard, there is a report. You can see, you can see it in yourself even without tapping into the API. You can go into the demographics of your ads and you can see the job titles, the company sizes, and the actual companies. You can actually pull that. They don't make it easy to find that for people that aren't in there every day, but you can actually pull that. It'll only show you, I think, like 20 companies.
25, yeah, 20 to
Yeah.
25
So
companies.
essentially, you would have to log in and you would have to like pull
Pull it.
that on a regular basis in order to have that. So the API is doing that multiple times a day, and it can stack up, thousands of those. So you can see all of them every time that those companies. So essentially, it keeps like an ongoing record of that. And then it would have to sync into your HubSpot or Salesforce to know, okay, this company has now is in your pipeline, and we see that it's been exposed to X amount of impressions on LinkedIn or X amount of actual clicks. And then it kind of cross-reference those. But now you have a deal closed. It had 500 LinkedIn impressions and they clicked on 3 of your ads. So essentially it's just trying to attribute like some influence, and then you'd still have to like use your brain and say, okay, do I think these 20 impressions actually influence this deal, or did they just get hit with some ads like on their way to closing anyway? Or I see this one, 500 impressions, 7 clicks over 90 days. Okay, LinkedIn ads probably played a role in them converting, especially if I can like see those. So I do like those reports, and Hockey Stack has a really good one where it's like that I actually look at, and it's LinkedIn influence on current pipeline deals and LinkedIn influence on closed won deals. And so I do look at that, and it is kind of like you're still guessing, like, okay, that doesn't look like, maybe it influenced it a ton. And this one for sure, LinkedIn was a key player in this one converting. So just some extra nuance, I guess, that helps add.
It's actually add more data or layers of data on top of your existing CRM and your website data so that you can get that impression. Last couple of questions, which couple of things which I wanted to talk about is like use of intent data. I mean, we have platforms like Bambora, Sixsense, and also de-anonymization providers like Clearbit and others. Things talk about like identifying which companies are coming to your website. That is, how do you use that with LinkedIn ads for your ABM and this thing?
So my favorite kind of intent data is the kind that's actually, linked to you. So if it's your website visitors, or if it's people that, have interacted, I guess that's the biggest one. If you have key accounts that have actually visited your website, and you can take that information, and then, what I would say is you could take those companies, add them into LinkedIn, expand to more relevant decision makers, and keep like a flow like that, where you're identifying key accounts that are visiting your website. You're then pulling those companies into a retargeting web and expanding to other relevant decision makers. That could really accelerate pipeline. There's other kind of intent data that people like to go after that I think can be really useful. One of the technographic lists that I really like to build is you have places like BuiltWith or Waplizer or other vendors where you can look at the technology that's actually installed on their website, and you can really get detailed with, hey, if they have this installed or this tech combination, they are absolutely, not only do they have budget, but they have a real problem, and I'm in the best position to solve that. That can really help. And I would say
technographic filters or breakdowns, which you can then use on top of your existing this data.
Yeah, those are really good. Those would still be mostly like cold lists, but you're kind of saying, hey, because of all this, I would say those are great lists. You could apply an appropriate budget to those. I wouldn't get too far extreme with intent data that isn't like first party intent data, that isn't like people that are in your already pipeline or have been exposed to you. If it's you're getting intent data and they've still never heard of you, that can be a great list to go after and can help you get more traction. But there's a big difference between your perfect ideal ICP that would be great for you to sign, and your perfect ICP that might actually be on LinkedIn. So I think part of the problem is people get these kind of amazing lists, and then they realize like LinkedIn, isn't the platform for that small group of people. There's few of them that are very active, so your cost per click is extremely high. So I would say load those lists, give it a small appropriate budget, see if that group is active. But I do think that part of the reason that LinkedIn native filters are pretty decent is because you're also kind of ensuring that these people are on LinkedIn, that they might actually be active. You might have a better chance of reaching them. So I would take someone that's, maybe a 7 as far as quality, but I can absolutely reach them, versus a 10 that, never logs into LinkedIn and impossible to reach them with ads.
Got it. One other aspect is like when I was going through your product and seeing you talk about day parting, frequency capping, and other filters. How does that help in terms of optimizing your LinkedIn ads for overall costs?
So yeah, one of the things we did, and the original product was DGP Demand Gen platform. We're actually rebranding. We bought the domain Demand Sense, which obviously is a kind of a play between 6 Sense and demand base. And my first question was, if we name this demand base, are we going to get sued by anyone? And I don't think so. But part of what we wanted to do is a LinkedIn centric platform at first. And yeah, the main tools that that comes with that seems to really help. Day parting, even just sticking with a basic schedule of saying, okay, I'm not going to be spending money after midnight or between 11 p.m. and 4 in the morning. Like, you don't have to get super detailed. You could go to Google Analytics and you could look at, where you're getting the most traffic and where the highest quality of traffic that's converting. And you could day part it to cut out a lot of the middle of the night, some of the weekend traffic that's a lot weaker. So that can actually really help. The other thing that day parting or ad scheduling can do is it can do rotating. So instead of just saying, I want to run this ad every day, but during these hours, I could say I have 2 campaigns and I want to alternate every other day. They kind of come in and out. So same amount of budget, double the campaigns, and you can alternate like every other day. That seems to work really well with kind of slow burning lists a little more and giving you some more flexibility. Frequency capping right now, that isn't as mature as we want. Right now it's at an account level and it's a lifetime frequency cap. So you could say, if a single account or a single company clicks on my ad or gets exposed to my ad X amount of times, there's a threshold where I feel like they're either going to buy or they're not. And after this point, I don't want to spend more dollars advertising to them. So that's what the frequency cap is right now. Eventually what I want to get it to is I want it to be a frequency cap by like week or month. So not necessarily I want to give up on them forever, but I want to pace, how much we're getting in front of someone on a weekly basis and not overdo it. If they're interacting with our ads a couple of times, that's probably good for this week. I kind of want to step back and then, re-engage them again in another week or so. But right now it's a lifetime cap. The other thing that's really helpful in that platform, and the last thing, is audience tuning, which I'm very excited about. And in that sense, what you were kind of talking about, the API of LinkedIn is bringing in, hey, these are the companies most engaging with your ads. Here's the company sizes that are engaging most with their ads, the industries, the job titles, and looking at that and taking action and saying, okay, this company, that's not a good fit, and clicking thumbs down and it getting added to your exclusion list, or certain seniorities or certain job titles that pop up that you say you don't want to spend money on. From that interface, you could actually just thumbs down it. It gets put on a universal exclusion list, and you can kind of clean up your audience as you're seeing who's interacting with it the most and taking action from there.
That's great. I think that should come through a certain thing. Last set of questions. I mean, what do you see happening in 2024 or 2025 with LinkedIn ads, and what are your predictions around LinkedIn ads and ABM around this time, given that?
One of the big things is I do see influencer marketing probably on the rise, and LinkedIn is leaning into that. They came out with the thought leader ads. So essentially now you can make a personal post from a personal profile, and then you can amplify that with the ad account to a very targeted audience. So I do think that's going to be a decent trend for 2024. I've already seen decent, not just, smaller companies, but actual big companies putting their CMO or their CEO on thought leader ads and using those to roll out announcements or partnerships and things like that. To that same effect, I think events, collaborative events, LinkedIn Live, those kind of things will get more increase. And I think LinkedIn has on the agenda to release more ads that support even LinkedIn Live events, so that you can host and amplify and target. And I don't think it's a coincidence that they're doing that with these thought leader push. I do think that's going to be a big trend for 2024 events and personal kind of influencer campaigns like that.
Got it. And in case, in terms of like multiple issues around cookie and also what we are seeing in terms of targeting capabilities and how we are seeing, are there any changes which are expected, especially from the LinkedIn ads side?
Some of the big steps they took is, and I'm sure the other platforms either have or will, is that there's a lot more targeting that isn't dependent on cookies. For example, you can, run the cold ads or run the videos, and you can actually retarget based on like ad interactions and company page interactions versus, the website cookie. I also think that, even the way they have it is, so when you have a single image ad and you're sending the traffic to the website, they don't have to land on the website and get hit by the cookie, and for that to work, for that person to be retargetable. LinkedIn now is registering anyone that clicks on your ad, and you can actually retarget just based on that without the cookie coming into play. So the big thing that it would limit would be the idea that LinkedIn retargeting can see all your website traffic and clean and qualify that. That would take a hit if these things kind of progress. And for that, I would say that is probably when you want to kind of own more of your data. If you're identifying your website visitors, or if you're taking your companies that are entering your pipeline and you're taking those lists and loading them into LinkedIn and expanding, a flow like that will probably become more vital, where you're really owning your own data.
First-party data.
Companies. Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
I think
you take your first-party data and your account level, and then you retarget them and other things. That's great. Cool. We are just on time. It's been a lot of insights. I've been taking quite a few notes as well across the board, of like right from starting with LinkedIn ads, account lists, to retargeting, to assets, to even more importantly around ROI and predictions for the future. So thanks a lot for all the insights. I think it's been great. And I think given it's a LinkedIn platform and you are a LinkedIn agency, people would know where to reach you if they are keen.
I think so.
Thanks a lot, Justin. Thanks a lot, everyone, for being part of this.
Awesome. Thank you.